Listen up, magnetic friend. There is no shame in admitting that you've purchased a memory improvement book with the hope and the wish and the fantasy that merely by acquiring it, it would help improve your memory. We've all done this with certain self-improvement books, but we also know that having a book sit on a shelf collecting dust doesn't work. So in this video, I'm going to give you the solution as a person who has read dozens of memory improvement books and hundreds of scientific articles about what actually works in memory, and we're getting started right now. The first tip that I have for you is not going to necessarily make me any friends in the memory improvement community, and it's this. There's a difference between short-term recall of information for memory competitions like playing cards, names, numbers, etc., and actually learning something so that you have it for the long term. And I think that the people who write those books who are memory competitors, they would agree that this is true. If they're actually honest and authentic people, they would say, yes, there is a bit of a problem here. Because if we want to use the techniques in order to have long-term retention, we're going to need to encode a little bit differently than memory competitors do, and we're going to need to definitely have a recall rehearsal process that enables for the information to last for the long term. So this is really, really important. And this isn't a new problem. In some of the Renaissance memory books that I've read, they talk about the difference between ars quadrata, or the square art, and ars rotunda, or the round, dynamic art. And the quadrata, the square art, is for just doing stunts, memorizing names for an hour or two. Whereas the rotunda art, this is for long-term knowledge, being able to carry entire books in your mind. When you had to go from Italy to Germany, for example, to give a lecture, you needed to be able to have that information in long-term memory and also have German itself at your disposal to be able to speak it to that audience in that country. And then after that, you had to go to England, right? So this is a very, very different way of using the techniques. And I think the answer for anybody to be able to get the best out of both worlds is to understand one rule very, very well. And that is 1 is the most dangerous number in memory improvement training. You need multiple memory improvement books, and you need a range of kinds of memory improvement books. You want to make sure that you know what the competitors do, because you're going to be in situations where you're meeting new people and you want to retain their names just for the life of the party. But you're also going to want to know what the ancient people did in order to carry entire books in their minds when they couldn't carry them on their backs. And that's a different thing. And there's very, very few people out there who try to bridge that gap. I'm one of them, and I've done it in books like The Victorious Mind. Lynn Kelly is another, and there are other people that you can look for. But the real meal deal is in the Renaissance and the medieval era books, and I highly encourage you to make sure you have them on your bookshelf. The Art of Memory is a good book for history, although it's got some problems. And The Memory Code by Lynn Kelly, again, is a newer memory book that includes multiple cultures, and it's very, very good. But ideally, you just want to have as much exposure as you can, because the content may be king, but context is God. And the people who have the best memories, they are on the God side of the equation. Another problem that people have is they get memory improvement books that have exercises that have nothing to do with their lives. And this explains why the books go back on the shelves and never get opened again. So I'm talking about the exercises where they ask you to memorize random words. Try to memorize chicken, pencil, eraser. I mean, this has no immediate relevance whatsoever, not even for practice. Oh, I memorized a bunch of words that have no value to me. Yippee-ki-yay. No, we need to think about this and translate the exercises to include information that actually improves our lives. Now, this is where some people will struggle. They don't necessarily know what's going to improve their lives. Now, this is where you need to do some self-analysis, but I want you to understand a very, very important principle. There is no such thing as general memory improvement. Memory improvement, in order to really pop, needs to be specific, and it needs to be strategic towards a goal. You have to have a burning problem that you want to solve. You have to want to be that best employee at your company who gets the raise and gets the promotion. You have to want to be that person who actually can speak another language. You have to be that person who knows all the emergency numbers in your family. And so, when you come across those exercises in those books, all you got to do is say, I'm not going to memorize the random list. I'm going to switch in stuff that will actually improve my life. And if it's a shopping list and you still want to work with a shopping list, well, at least learn that shopping list in another language and use the techniques to practice that because that is making sure that you don't confuse activity with accomplishment. The only way that you're ever really going to get the ball rolling is to focus on making sure the activity leads to accomplishment, not just activity that leads to more activity. If books have a weakness, it's that they cannot hold you accountable to themselves, but they can create the Zeigarnik effect. And the Zeigarnik effect, it can be described a lot of different ways, but one of the ways it's described is that the more things you have on your to-do list, the more your to-do list keeps coming to mind and making you feel horrible about how many things are on your to-do list. And bookshelves can have that effect. You just collect more and more books, and it weighs on your soul that you haven't actually gotten through them yet. Of course, a lot of people have found that they can erase this problem altogether by hiding all the books they buy in their apps. And that's not good either, because then you still aren't reading the books. So, how can you get some accountability? Well, there's at least 3 ways. You can get accountability to yourself, you can get accountability to another person that is your friend or a family member that you see every day, or you can get accountability through a group, and there are various social platforms that allow you to do that, and there are various softwares that will, penalize you if you don't complete certain goals and send some of your money to charity, etc. So you can get accountability in those different ways. But at the end of the day, I think one of the best ways to give yourself accountability is to have that burning mission, to want to be that kind of person who makes it happen. And for that, you might want to create a vision statement, and I'll have a link for you down below for my full training on how to create a memory training vision statement. And if you complete it and you follow the exercises, you will find that you have a vibrant, magnetic vision that propels you forward and causes you to create self-accountability, which is the highest kind. Another magical way to have memory improvement books help you is called review karma. So if you've read a memory improvement book like The Victorious Mind, go on Amazon or Goodreads and leave a review. No, I'm just kidding. That will not help improve your memory. But it will help authors like myself to produce more books for you so that you can follow the rule of reading multiple books and expanding your context. When it comes to reviews, you also have to be very, very careful about reading the reviews of others, because they don't necessarily actually do the things that the book talks about. They actually just love the message. They love the material, and bless them. That's amazing. And I really appreciate their support for all the people they support with their reviews. But there are also people who are grumbly and groaning, and they haven't actually lifted even the slightest amount of their finger to take action on those books. So what business do they have judging them? I don't know. Reviews are a dangerous thing. But what we need is reviews from people, and I know the people who use memory techniques are really busy using the memory techniques, but we do need reviews from people who actually have used the techniques to share their stories and to help make this tradition grow and be more and more meaningful over time. So sharing your stories, submitting videos to help explain what you've done with these techniques is wonderful. And it is so impactful, more than you can imagine, because memory training is a challenge, and it is something that, if people can see other people, the mirror neurons get switched on and they go, okay, I'm in, I'm going to give this a try. And then we have a much better world, because the more we know, the more we can know, and the more mistakes we avoid as we go throughout life. Speaking of supporting authors, thank you to everybody who's been asking about my new novel. I am delighted to announce that it is finally ready for you to get a sample of this novel by going to magneticmerrymethod.com/NS, which stands for Novel Sample. You'll also get the title reveal and the cover reveal, plus some teasing about my memory game about to come. Now, this memory game is only for people who have this novel. So make sure that you go and get this sample and start to build in your mind what this is all about so that you'll be ready to play the game. This is an innovation that I've never seen ever before in the memory improvement world, and a new kind of book and a new kind of learning experience. But you're going to need to be in this world in order to play it, because I had to build what's called a Paracosm for you in order for there to be a game to play. So there's an entire universe, a detective who's losing his abilities to use his mind because he has PTSD and early cognitive decline. But he also has a best friend, and his best friend happens to be a memory champion, and a very special memory champion, as you'll note from the very first chapter. So I've got the PDF of the opening of the book, and I recorded the audio for you if you like audiobooks instead, and you can download both at magneticmarymethod.com/NS. Get the title, get the cover in advance, and you'll also get to see a wonderful graphic of the memory game that is going to be exclusive for people who have this book when it goes live. There's a question that no memory improvement book I'm aware of has an answer to, and I don't think the answer is ever coming, which is, how often should I practice and for how long should I practice before that I'm going to start having an amazing memory? And the reason why nobody knows is because you should never stop practicing. The master of memory uses the techniques, and by using them, you're practicing them. So it never ends. However, in the opening gambit, I would suggest that you commit to one book for a 90-day period at least. Maybe make it 100. And if you need help during those 100 days to not forget your mission or your goal, I highly recommend the Freedom Journal. Now, the Freedom Journal is engineered to help you accomplish goals over 100 days. I've used it myself when I was invited to China, and I really had no interest as such in learning Mandarin. I just sat down and had that book at the foot of my bed, so I saw it every morning when I woke up, and I put it on my pillow so I saw it every night before I went to bed to work on Mandarin each and every day, and I got enough together to be able to do, well, relatively okay by the time that I got there, with limited amount of time in my day. So what the real secret is behind all of this is not just that you have reminded yourself to show up for your goal each and every day, but there's brain science we have that we know it takes about 90 days in order to form a habit. And this is all neurochemical stuff, but basically the long and short of it is that our neurons have connections, and in order for those connections to make very, very rigid myelin sheaths wrap around them, 90 days is about what we need in order to get a habit going that will last for life. So, Freedom Journal, a very, very nice resource. I've only used it twice. Now I just sort of do it on my own with a piece of paper in a journal, a notebook, and track my goals. Very, very important. And heaven forbid you should not want to have a big journal around that would remind you of your goals, because it is a way of turning your environment into a memory palace, so why wouldn't you want to? But let's just say you didn't. You could memorize a very simple acronym. Now, the birth of the F.R.E.E. acronym, F.R.E.E., comes from Tony Buzan, an idea that he sparked in me. One night at dinner, he was talking to me about some of the things that I was talking to him about, and he said, Anthony, the rules will set you free. And I thought about that for a long time, and I realized, his love of Twitter that he had at that time, he loved it because of the rules of the character count, causing you to think about constraints, limiting factors that you place upon yourself in order to have explosive amounts of expression, or going supernova, as he called it when I talked with him later on the Magnetic Mary Method podcast. And I really, really glommed onto that, and I thought about it a lot, and I thought we could make an easy-to-remember acronym from F.R.E.E., which is frequent practice in a state of relaxation, and a spirit of experimentation will give you endless entertainment as you continue to use memory techniques. So this is another way of saying practice for at least 90 days with one book until you add on another book, and you'll be able to create those brain connections, but you just need it to be frequent. Does it have to be every day? I really don't know. That's up for you to find in your own exploration, but try to go for at least 4 times a week in order to have enough consistency, and make sure that you're relaxed. Before you take that book down from the shelf, do a little bit of Qigong or Tai Chi or what have you. Do some progressive muscle relaxation, do some breathing, put yourself in a state where you're receptive and your monkey mind chatter goes down. And then be willing to experiment. Do the exercises. Switch in your own meaningful material, but do them in the spirit of experimentation, which means let go of the outcome. Don't worry about pass or fail. Don't worry about right or wrong. Just go through the movements and then be entertained by what happens, good or bad, and you will have a much better time. It is such an extraordinary model, and I'm so grateful that he said that to me, and that somehow the gods of memory fizzled into a nice acronym. Frequent practice in a state of relaxation and a spirit of experimentation so you can be endlessly entertained. That's worth memorizing and repeating. Now, memory books can have a ton of information, and you might not know what's important in the book. So as you're reading, rather than taking notes and copying the book into another notebook, I recommend that you extract that information in a particular way And I will share a little bit about how to do that in just a moment. But first, let's double down on relaxation and talk about meditation, or better said, meditations. Because in order to get the most out of mindfulness, we want to meditate in a couple of different ways. So one of the things that I discovered is that, doing that, a little bit of Tai Chi or Qigong, is a kind of meditation. Going and walking is a kind of meditation. But the ultimate kind of meditation is memory-based meditation, which is memorizing material that you use to calm your mind and to settle and focus and practice the techniques themselves while you're sitting in a more or less traditional meditation pose or doing a walking meditation, or ideally both. So this is what I talk about in The Victorious Mind, and if you haven't read it, basically I made it a goal to stop my thoughts entirely. Now, I'm not entirely there yet, but I have experienced complete shutdown of the noise in my mind. It is exquisite. Basically, what I did is I memorized a text that helps me notice that my thoughts are just off like a little undisciplined child, and then bring them back to center, bring them to silence. And it is an extraordinary text. The text is literally designed to cause you to reflect on thought in such a way that it neutralizes thought. And I've memorized a number of these texts now, and they're really, really good. So memory-based meditation is specifically a kind of meditation where you use these techniques to memorize material that helps you shut down the monkey mind. And then that helps you stop being distracted when you're trying to read a memory improvement book and put its exercises into action. And for that, I want you to do something that is going to be a really hard thing for a lot of people, and that is to get off the computer and go and read the book somewhere where you will not be interrupted. It is almost impossible, at least in my mind, to read anything when there are multiple tabs and all kinds of distractions and, oh, I gotta look this up, and then when you go to look it up, then there's flashing ads that give you dopamine spikes, when what you need is tonic dopamine, a regular flow, and that comes from being in places where you won't be interrupted. Now myself, almost every day I go for a walk and I leave the dumb phone at home. And I feel so much better during that time because I couldn't be interrupted even if I wanted to. All the photographs that I share on social media and on the community tab here on YouTube, those are taken by my wife. She brings her phone, but I am free from it. And it is so restorative of that tonic dopamine because I'm just a human like anybody else. If I expose my brain for over 90 days to this sort of bells and whistles and all that sort of stuff, it's going to rewire it as well to crave the constant interruption. So the answer is to leave it alone. And that's how I read so much. It's also how I manage to write so much. It is just simply being away from those interruptions. Not just to be away from the interruptions, but to be away from the effects on the brain that the interruptions create, how they disrupt your dopamine flow. I call this practice digital fasting, and it's very, very simple. Look at a calendar, find a time, leave the device behind, and don't come back until that you've read a significant portion of a book. And repeat and repeat and repeat again. You can take a book to a park bench or a cafe or a restaurant or a library without a device, and you can have a notebook or a special device I'll talk about in a second that enables you to extract the most key important information from a book without reproducing the book into another book, and then put it into action and do some of those exercises without being interrupted by anything. And we're living in a period where so many people don't have the confidence to even make that decision, that hell yeah, I'm going to leave the device behind. And this is a problem in mindset and mental metaphors. So I would encourage you to develop an all-in attitude. I like to think of sometimes having a fighter pilot attitude, where this is the mission and I'm going in for the kill. I am hunting for what I want to have happen in my life and in my world, and I want to be able to learn, and I go in and I have that attitude. I adopt it. Yes, it's a little bit artificial, but it's not forced. It is something that is based on science, it's strategic, and anybody can do it. And all you have to do is start to think about, what is my metaphor for myself now? How am I thinking about myself, even if it's not metaphorically? Start to write down what your self-image is, and then write down what you would like your self-image to be. Tools like the Freedom Journal will help with this, and you can craft over time, ideally 90 days, so you can have enough time to rewire your brain, and you're just going to have such a better time in life because you're able to be all in and hell yeah, and make it happen based on a strong personal metaphor. Maybe you don't want to be a fighter pilot with a fighter pilot attitude, but if you craft something that works for you and you're willing to experiment, remember that's the first E in F.R.E.E., then you're going to have a much better time, because if you let go of each and every experiment, then you will never think that you wasted time on a metaphor that wasn't right for you. You'll just say, that didn't work, I wonder why. And then you get curious, which is entertaining, the second E in our F.R.E.E. model, and then you get back to it and you have another metaphor and another metaphor. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple metaphors. I think of my mind as a garden, and I weed it, and then I rinse and repeat with some fertilizer, and I till the soil, and I put some new seeds in and all sort of stuff to grow this magnetic garden over time. That's another metaphor that I love to use. Creating and using metaphors is so important to give you that confidence so that you have a mental reference that you can go back to. Oh, here's my little whiny self. Let's get rid of that guy and go back to the fighter pilot. He's more interesting and he's a lot more fun. It works. Give it a try. Now, I mentioned I would share a strategy for extracting notes from memory improvement books. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, for one thing, you don't want to, in your notes, reproduce an entire book into another book. You want them to be free-floating notes so that you can refer to them in different orders, and if you want to, match the order of your notes to memory palace stations as you're learning and memorizing the information so that you are able to use it. So there's a special strategy for that. But another reason why you want to take notes is so that you can keep reading the book, notice what the exercises are, and if you don't want to stop and do the exercises, you have them isolated in a very special way so that you can use those exercises later and get massive results from the memory improvement books that you're reading. And my goal for this video has been so that you can watch this, take these tips, and then go back to your shelf and reread or read for the first time memory improvement books that you've collected and finally get results from them. So, in order to understand what this special note-taking strategy is, I have another video for you. It's called How to Memorize a Textbook. And when you learn what the special device is that you use to extract your notes from so that they are free-floating and manipulable, you're going to find that you are able to use any book you read much, much better. And I hope you will apply it to memory improvement books. And I can't wait to hear of your success. So thank you as always for watching. Thanks for being subscribed. Thanks for those thumbs up. And let me know in the discussion below how this has changed your perception of memory improvement books. And get out there and keep yourself magnetic.